probably one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. In 1890, the average New Yorker was eating 600 oysters a year. You know what it is today? 0.4.
Even when we had COVID, every doctor would say, take zinc, but unfortunately there's a lot of zinc that is not natural, it's pharmaceutical, it's chemical.
When you take zinc synthetically like that, that's not the way nature intended us to get our nutrition. So people who are taking synthetic zinc, or elemental zinc as we like to call it, they were becoming copper deficient. And zinc being the most ubiquitous element in the body, it actually controls 300 enzyme reactions in the body and 2,000 transcription factors. Controls everything, energy levels, hormonal health, skin, hair, nails, sexual health. Really, really important for everything.
Libido went up.
Casanova effect.
Yeah.
Well, Casanova was the famous Italian lover from France. He reportedly ate 72 oysters every day. Product cures menstrual cramps in everyone. Anything you can do to delay that damage in the mitochondria is a big win in the longevity space, and it's the elixir. But we ate oysters for about 250,000 years, and there's a theory that oysters actually save humanity.
Hello, and welcome to Wellness is Life podcast. I'm your host, Natalia Naila, and today we're going to talk about one of nature's most extraordinary sources of nutrition, OnlyOysters. Our wild Irish oyster extract is redefining what real nutrition means by keeping it pure and simple, with nothing added and nothing artificial, just pure ocean minerals in their most natural and powerful form. Harvested from pristine Ireland's Atlantic waters, these oysters are packed with B12, zinc, copper, manganese, and selenium, nutrients that help fuel energy, balance hormones, support healthy skin, hair, nails, fertility, focus, and vitality from the inside out. Joining me today is Steven from OnlyOysters, the mastermind behind this incredible supplement. We'll talk what makes these oysters so unique, why Ireland's waters are so special, and how this pure, wild nutrition is transforming lives around the world. Stephen, so nice to have you here. We are in London recording our podcast. Let's talk all about oysters today. And I've met you like a year and a half ago at Dave Asprey's show. I think it was somewhere in Dallas, Texas, I believe, right? Or something like that. So we go every year, different places. But when I met you and we started talking about your oysters that you harvest and produce in your beautiful facility in Ireland, I was like, oh my God, finally someone has 100% pure supplement that is a pure food. And I was drawn to that. And then you gave me a few bottles. I started taking them. I gave it to my friends and family. And we all saw incredible results. Like one of my girlfriends, she said the hair starts growing from different places, which is good for the hair and the head. But like she's like, I started growing hair everywhere. And what I saw in myself, hormone balanced out very nicely. And how I know, I did the test before hormones. And when I started taking the oysters, my hormones were a little bit off balance. And then when I retested well on your oyster, and it was like totally balanced everything out, which we know the synergy and this beautiful oysters are perfect for hormone balancing because we have this incredible zinc and B12 and selenium and copper and manganese, and the synergy it makes it this natural form, right? And so I'm super excited to have this conversation. I want to dive in and explain to everyone why these 100% oysters are so important. Our ancestors have been taking them for thousands of years. Apparently, they knew something more than what we know, and the scientists are discovering why these oysters are so important. So why is our natural supplement made purely from wild oysters are so incredible?
Well, great to see you again. I think we met in Orlando first at the biohacking, Dave Asprey's biohacking show.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
And then subsequent every year after that. So it's great to be back in London. I used to live here, so not too far from here. It's great to see London again. It's a beautiful city.
It is beautiful.
So yeah, well, to answer your question, why are oysters so incredible? When you talk about oysters, you're talking about one of the most nutrient-dense foods, and these are oysters as you'd eat them in a restaurant. This is probably one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. When we take these oysters, which are very large, and
That is
turn
a
them
large.
into only oysters for you, that nutrient density goes stratospheric, and it goes off the charts altogether. So much so that in Europe, with a product like this, we could make 40 health claims on it, and that's unheard of in the supplement business for a natural product like this. So why it's so incredible? Well, first and foremost, it's made by me. But oysters are really high in zinc and a lot of other minerals. They're the highest natural source of zinc. And zinc being the most ubiquitous element in the body, it actually controls 300 enzyme reactions in the body and 2,000 transcription factors. So without getting too sciencey, transcription factors turn DNA on and off. And you being a biohacker, you know that the whole purpose of biohacking is to turn genes on and off. You want to get our genes to do things, to make us live longer, to be healthier, to be smarter. Yeah. So that zinc and its cofactors like copper and manganese, and then other elements like iodine and selenium, they're working to regulate the genetic processes in the body, and they do so many things. You know, people say to me, what's it good for? And I say, well, because zinc being just one element of 59 in the product, which are naturally occurring from the sea, from the ocean, we don't add anything to this product, I'll hasten to add. So we like to say that the ocean is our laboratory and the oysters do all the work. They've been doing that for 300 million years. That's how old a species is.
Wow, that's incredible.
And we've been eating them for probably 250,000 years as humans. So the oysters do all the work. They concentrate all this fantastic nutrition, and when we eat the oysters, we get the benefits of that.
Wow, and you've been in this business for 3 decades or 2 decades. I remember we were having the conversation. Why did you choose oysters, and how did you start in the oyster business?
You're not going to tell all your followers how old I am, are you?
No, but it's really nice to hear the story.
So yeah, it's 35 years now.
Wow.
I've been working as a marine biologist. That was where I started the business. I studied shellfish biology in the UK, again in North Wales, in the shellfish and the marine science School of Ocean Sciences, in North Wales. And it's probably the world's foremost research facility for shellfish biology.
Wow.
So I studied there, and then when I went back to Ireland, I worked in the oyster business. And I did think when I started doing marine biology, I'd be in the Bahamas studying dolphins on a sandy coral beach. I have been there, but I didn't get a job there. But I ended up in Ireland working with oysters, and I realized that oysters are probably one of the most important species in the ocean, actually. They're what we call an ecosystem engineer. And without oysters in the ocean, we wouldn't have any of the rest of the marine life that we see. So when I obviously started looking at oyster nutrition, then a whole new world opened up to us, and we realized that, oh, right, this is what they do. These are really important for not just for the ocean, but for us from a nutritional perspective. This is incredible.
Yeah, you're right, because we're supposed to have eat oysters twice a week. But of course, these days, eating oysters even once a week, you never know where these oysters at the restaurants coming from. They can be contaminated. And a lot of these days, oysters actually comes from farms, as you know. And as we know, farms can be so contaminated. And we know, a lot of poisons happened while people eating oysters around the world. Even in the most pristine restaurants, I've got food poison twice eating oysters at the expensive restaurants. Thank God I wasn't anything bad, but still it's a food poison, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be very careful, which oysters do you eat? So, which is kind of a cool, to have that in a supplement form. And I wanted to ask you, how do you guys harvest these oysters? And I know you harvest them in small batches. Why is it so important for you, as your philosophy, to have a small batches, and how the whole process is happening?
Well, it's interesting what you were saying there about eating oysters. But in 1890, the average New Yorker was eating 600 oysters a year. Do you know what it is today? It's 0.4.
Why is
So
that?
we've lost, because all the native stocks of oysters were wiped out in the 1800s. From about 1870 to 1910, oysters all over the world were decimated, to the point that most of the oysters nowadays are well, 99% of the wild stocks were wiped out, and most of the oysters that we know of today are from aquaculture. And that in itself is not a problem, but the issue with oysters is they're not like fish, they can't swim away. They're what we call sessile. So wherever they are, they can't move, they can't run away. So if there's pollution in the water, they're going to, and they're filter feeders, so they're filtering the water. So if there's pollution in the water, they're going to concentrate it. So the most important thing with oysters is the source, where you're getting them from, and the quality of the water. And if proper protocols are followed by the people working with the oysters, you shouldn't be getting sick. I've been doing this for 35 years. I've never been sick on oysters.
Well, because you're probably getting them from the most cleanest waters. Why Atlantic waters in Ireland makes them so clean? Because it's a cold water, or
It's cold water is very good, yeah. There's no industry around there. There's no raw sewage or anything like that going in across the oyster beds. There's a lot of things that can go wrong there, but we have really strict, probably the strictest monitoring protocols in the world. We've never had a shellfish, any serious issues with shellfish around biotoxins or that. There are certain toxins in the sea that occur naturally, and shellfish can accumulate them, and they have to be monitored weekly. And that's all done in Ireland very, very rigorously, because we have a huge shellfish industry, not just oysters, but mussels and crab and lobster and all that. And it's a very valuable industry. So the government put a lot of money into monitoring, and a lot of marine biologists keeping an eye on the situation.
so again, why makes the Irish coastline so unique compared to others? They harvested oysters.
Well, the Irish coastline is very interesting when it comes to oysters, because oysters have this really high level of zinc, and they're the only animal that actually accumulates zinc actively. So what that means is that they have to use energy to accumulate it. All other animals accumulate it passively. So oysters, if you put oysters and mussels in the same body of water, the oyster will accumulate up to 50 times more zinc than the mussel, because it does that actively, and that's part of its biology and where it lives. We'll get into that a little bit more in a while. But Ireland actually sits on the largest underground zinc mine in the world.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so the waters around Ireland are naturally higher in zinc, and the oysters accumulate that zinc and make it bioavailable for us when we eat the oysters. They accumulate it, what's called hyperaccumulation in their cells, and then it becomes very bioavailable to us when we eat the oysters.
And so, why do you think zinc is so important for humanity and the body?
Well, like we said, it's the most ubiquitous element in the body. Controls 300 enzyme reactions, 2,000 transcription factors. It controls everything: energy levels, hormonal health, skin, hair, nails, sexual health, all this stuff. Really, really important for everything.
Yeah, even when we had COVID, every doctor would say, take zinc. But unfortunately, there's a lot of zinc that is not natural. It's pharmaceutical, it's chemical. So what makes the difference between the pharma or chemical produced zinc to natural zinc?
Well, this was the problem. When you take zinc synthetically like that, that's not the way nature intended us to get our nutrition. So people who were taking synthetic zinc, or elemental zinc as we like to call it, they were becoming copper deficient. And then when you become copper deficient, iron metabolism gets upset, because copper controls ceruloplasm, which transports iron in the body. And we're getting all these other problems. People's hair was going grey because of copper deficiency. Their blood markers were out. That's not how we get it. In oysters, the copper, the zinc, the manganese, they're balanced as nature intended.
It's beautiful. And as you said, it's such a beautiful synergy there, which all the elements that an oyster is, the body needs on an everyday basis. And I know, like, from taking it, everybody's asking why I have such a beautiful glowing skin. Well, of course, part of the reasons as well, oysters that I'm taking there every day. Of course, you suggest taking 4, but I just like literally put in my hand and take 10, because, as you said, it's pure food. So how many oysters are in one bottle?
Okay, these are very big oysters. And this is an exceptional specimen, of course. Can I see that little small one there? I'll show you. So this is what most people will recognize as an oyster that they get in a restaurant. But you put this guy back in the water, he'll grow into this. So this guy's about 3.5 years old. This is about 15 to 20 years old.
Wow.
And these are the big wild oysters that we fish in Ireland to make.
And that's what
only
you put
oysters.
this in the bottle. And how many of the small or big ones, large ones in the bottle?
So we get 4 to 5 kilos of oysters per bottle, which is about 10 of these big guys we managed to squash into this bottle.
That is so incredible. And we have about 150 capsules in this bottle.
In the bottle, yeah. So about 4 capsules is about 1 oyster, probably about half the size of this. This is of course, he's trying to run away.
So 4 capsules is half of this oyster?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's a lot, yeah.
I mean, how many small would be, like 10, a dozen?
Sorry?
How many small oysters would that be? Like if you would get...
The smaller ones?
the
Yeah,
smaller ones.
you could be getting 1 oyster per capsule.
Yeah. Interesting.
In the small oysters. So we don't, because these are wild oysters, they come in all shapes and sizes and different meat contents and everything. It's quite complex what we have to do to try and standardize the product. It's impossible to standardize a natural product because nature varies so much, but we have managed to get it within very strict parameters. We can keep it within those parameters and those specifications. We have a lot of specifications on what the product should be. So yeah, we go by weight, and we say about 4 to 5 kilos of oysters in the shell is what we get in a bottle, but we don't put the shell in. The shell is used for separate processes. It goes off to other companies that use it for different industries. We just take the meat from the oyster.
Right.
But that meat is carefully monitored throughout the year, and we only harvest that oyster when the nutrient levels are really, really high in it.
And how do you know?
We test it in the laboratory. We use a third-party external laboratory to test everything.
And then you put them in the water if they're not ready.
We leave them. We don't harvest them, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Wow,
we've
that's
been doing this for
beautiful.
25 years, so
That is
we know
so beautiful.
we know when is the right time. It took a long time to figure out. It took at least the first 5 or 6 years to figure out how to standardize the product somewhat and keep those really high levels of zinc and copper and manganese and all in the product.
And how often the oysters gets reborn, or how do they actually get in the water?
Well, they actually spawn in the water, yeah. So there's 2 types of oysters that we have in Ireland. This actual species here is what you would know as a West Coast variety, what you'd be used to getting in California. So these oysters were brought to Ireland in the 1970s. And what happened was because our waters are so cold, they were not supposed to live in Ireland. We thought they would spawn, but that they wouldn't survive. The larvae, when they spawn, wouldn't survive, but nature finds a way. And they did. And these have now naturalized in Ireland in some bays where water temperatures are slightly higher. And they're actually classed as an invasive species, believe it or not. So we're helping to control them by making the product from them. Now, the other species of oysters is, so this oyster is called Crassus triagygus, and the other species is Ostrea edulis, which is our native oyster. We have one here. So this is the native Irish oyster. It's the flat European oyster.
It doesn't, without the top or with the top?
It has a top,
It
yeah.
has a top,
But all oysters
but it's
have
a
2 shells.
different, it's really pretty.
And this is quite an old oyster too, but these grow really slow. So that's why they brought these oysters in the 1970s, because they grow much faster. But they didn't realize they were going to naturalize in Ireland. So they were...
and now
they
it's
decided
a lot of them.
They liked Ireland and they decided to stay.
That is so cool. I
Yeah.
love that. And so how did the process actually look like from ocean to finished product?
So yeah, these oysters are grown wild on the west coast of Ireland, which is very beautiful, very pristine area. It's kind of an agrarian type environment over there. There's some farming, mainly animals. There's no arable farming, so there's no sprays or glyphosate going into the water, this kind of stuff. So it's very clean. There's 2,000 miles of North Atlantic water between us and Newfoundland. So there's some of the cleanest waters in the world, and they're very cold, pure, clean waters. So the fishermen catch them first, but either by boat, or sometimes they handpick them when the water goes out, from the tide goes out. And they ship them to our facility, which is just south of Dublin on the east coast. And we're in a very beautiful part of Ireland called County Wicklow. It's called the Garden of Ireland. And our plant is there, and we have our own well water, and it's a small artisan production facility. So we bring in the oysters. They have to be shucked. So shucking is what the term used for removing the meat from the oysters. We take the meat out. It goes into a very slow drying convection process that we've developed over the years. After that, we micronize it, and the capsules are hand-filled. We don't use any flow agents. We don't use any of the kind of chemicals that you see in other supplements. It's all done by hand. And we polish the capsules when they're finished and bottle them, label them, and send them straight off to you, Natalia.
Beautiful. And how do you preserve the nutrients, vitamins and minerals, and amino acids during the processing?
Well, we're very careful with the temperature. It's a slow drying convection process we use. Some of the other companies out there doing oyster extract, they use freeze drying. And we tried that at the very beginning. We had a lot of trial and error to get this product right. We didn't like freeze drying. We didn't like what it was doing to the product. We didn't like the loss of bioactivity, and it was just a very different. It's a different type of process. It's quite vigorous as well. Large scale industrial freeze drying is quite a vigorous process. It uses a lot of high temperature. People think it doesn't, but it does. And with trial and error, we developed a slow drying process, and we don't irradiate. A lot of companies irradiate their products with gamma irradiation.
What's that?
So you can take a product, put it into a chamber, and blast it with radiation, gamma irradiation. That's measured in grays. The scale is called grays. So you can blast it with so many grays of radiation, it'll make it sterile. It'll kill everything.
Wow.
Now, it's a great technology for, like, maybe, let's say, single-use medical devices like a syringe. And I wouldn't mind somebody using a syringe if I was getting an injection that had been through a gamma chamber, but I don't want my food coming through it.
Interesting.
So
I want to thank today's sponsor, Aura Wellness. This is truly one of my favorite products. I use it every morning and night without skipping. And I've seen incredible results, from glowing skin to fewer wrinkles. Their glutaril antioxidant spray delivers high-potency glutathione and works by supporting your mitochondria, the powerhouses of your cells. That means your skin and your energy are being supported from the inside out. If you want to try it for yourself, see the link in my description and use my promo code Natalia15 for 15% off.
There was a massive study done in Ireland by our Food Safety Authority on supplements, and 90% of the supplements coming into the market in Europe had been irradiated, and they were coming from China, Bangladesh, different places like that. And the conclusion of the study was they were irradiating it to make up for poor hygiene practices in the factory. So I could literally make a product in a sewer, bottle it, wrap it, put it in a gamma chamber. It'll come out sterile. It'll be safe to eat, but it's dead. And one of the ways we tested that was with the French. We actually developed this product at the beginning with a French company, and they're very into alchemy and energy and chi energy, and they measure energy. That's chi energy. They have a system called a Bova scale they measure energy on. And they said to me that when products have been irradiated, they can't raise the chi energy above zero. And they actually raise the energy before they give it to them. And I actually tested them at the time, because I said, I sent them over 3 samples. I just labeled them A, B, C. This is very early days. And one of them had been put through a gamma chamber. And they actually came back to me and said, yeah, we don't know what's wrong with A. It's completely dead. And I went, wow, they can pick that up. And B and C were 2 processes that we were working on, the slow drying convection processes. And they said the process that we now use, they said that's the highest energy signature they've ever seen in a supplement. So it was lovely to get that. And that's kind of non-physical science. Now we measure, I'm more of an orthodox scientist, and we measure everything in laboratories. We test for all the minerals, we measure the levels, and we actually put them on the bottle, of course. You know that on your label.
Yeah.
All those minerals are on there, so people can actually use the product therapeutically. And that's how our product is used. There's an awful lot of doctors and therapists. In France, for example, my main customer there, that's how they use it. When people present to naturopathic doctors in France and they have kind of metabolic type syndrome disorders, and that they'll put them on a course of oyster extract because they know that's correcting all the mineral imbalances in the body. It's like one of our gurus would have been Linus Pauling. He was a famous American biochemist, and Linus Pauling said every ailment, every illness can be traced to a mineral deficiency.
That's true.
And that's kind of what we go along with. But people take minerals synthetically or from the earth or even from plants. But the higher up the food chain you go, the more bioavailable they become to us. And oysters just happen to be the species with the highest levels of some of those really important trace minerals, and more importantly, again, even the trace metals like copper, manganese, zinc. So they happen to be the highest. So taking them from the oyster is by far the best way to get them.
But how do you ensure that every batch stays free from contaminants and heavy metals?
Well, with oysters, it's about source, always about the source. And I know these areas. I dive and snorkel them, and we study the hinterland. We study the rivers feeding into the bays. In the early days, we got all the reports from the Rivers Authority in Ireland, who monitor all the rivers, so we were able to pick areas that we knew were really, really clean. So you start with that, where you're sourcing your oysters from. After we process the product, we test every batch, every single batch. Most people I've talked to at the trade shows are fascinated by this, because we would only actually have to test those batches every 2 years for certain things like heavy metals or even the zinc, the copper, the manganese. But we do about 14 batches a year, and we test every single batch. You would have to test every batch for microbes, of course, to make sure they're safe for public consumption. But we test every single batch for heavy metals, for the elements that we put on the bottle: zinc, copper, manganese, iodine, selenium, vitamin B12. And we test for microbiology. We do full biological suite on the product as well to make sure it's absolutely safe to eat. There's nothing like oysters have been associated with things like Vibrio and norovirus, and we're obviously testing to make sure none of them are in there, so they're really safe for children, pregnant women, everything like that, you know.
Yeah, let's talk about pregnancy. How important is this extract for pregnant women, and also get pregnant too as well?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so when women are pregnant and when they're lactating, their nutritional demands go up by as much as 50%, especially for things like zinc. So this is a fantastic source of that. It's the best source for it. From a fertility perspective, for men and women, oysters have certain amino acids, and those elements like zinc is really important for testosterone production and progesterone production in women, and free testosterone actually in women. It's very high in selenium again, which is important for spermatogenesis for men and for testosterone production. So there's several mechanisms as regards fertility and sexual health that are triggered and stimulated by taking oyster extract for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend who's taking these oysters. I gave him for already like 4 months. And I recorded testimonials 2 months ago after he's been taking for 2 months. He goes, oh my God, he's like, my libido went up.
The Casanova effect.
Yeah. So do you hear that a lot from over the years?
Well, Casanova was the famous Italian lover from France. He reportedly ate 72 oysters every day.
What?
And in his memoirs, he said he ate 6 dozen every day. But yeah, we knew then that it goes back to the Greek doctrine of signatures. Actually, so the Greeks had a philosophy called the doctrine of signatures, where foods that looked like parts of the human body were good for that part of the body. So they believed that walnuts were good for the brain because a walnut looks a bit like a brain. And we actually know that that's true now, because walnuts are high in omega-3s, which are very good for brain development. Some of the other ones like asparagus and carrots and cucumbers, or anything that looked like a phallus, was supposed to be good for male sexual health. But there was no such thing. There was no mention really in the literature when I was studying all that about female reproductive health. And of course, oysters in their natural state do resemblance female genitalia, and that was one of the reasons they believed they're really good for women too. Yeah. They're one of the only ionic foods, believe it or not.
Yeah. So do you hear a lot from women that they've balanced out their hormones and they feel much better, like energy wise? What else?
It's by far the biggest area for the product, and the biggest area of growth for it is hormonal health. And at some stage down in the future, I'd love to do some clinical trials and human clinical trials to find out the exact mechanism. But yeah, we think it's really to do with the thyroid, because the iodine and the selenium in the product and also the zinc, they're very important for the hormones and converting T4 to T3, which is the active form. So if you've got a hyper or hypoactive thyroid, it's hyperactive.
That's what I had, and actually balanced me out.
Yeah, if you have a hyperactive, you can have anxiety and stuff like that. And then if it's hypothyroidism, you can have depression and sadness and these huge swings. And that's what we find, that it's balancing that. People are saying they're just in such good food, good mood.
Good food, good mood.
That's what I'm saying. But we have, like I say, hormonal health is huge for us. All around menstrual health as well. For some reason, the product cures menstrual cramps in everyone. I don't know how it does it.
That's
possibly again to
beautiful.
do with progesterone.
Yeah.
But it's one of the areas people come back. Some women are crippled with that for years and years, and they cannot believe that they found something that works for it.
And let's talk about hair, nails, and skin. I know you have this incredible story that you told me. One guy who came to visit you, and he bought like a few bottles. He calls you back, orders again. Like how many? Tell me the story. It was this guy who grew his hair from bald within the 6 months, and then his energy went off the roof. Like he couldn't even walk.
He was a young guy working in the stock exchange in New York, actually, and he had chronic zinc malabsorption secondary to Crohn's disease. And he'd ordered a few bottles off us. Then he rang and he ordered 20, and then he rang me back again and he ordered 50 bottles. And I was just talking to him on the telephone. I said, are you a shop or a clinic or what do you do? He says, no, I take it myself. And I was looking at the screen and the orders. I thought, I said, you can't be taking that much. He says, I do. I take a half to a full bottle a day. This is when we started the business. And I was like, why? Well, that's an awful lot, to take. Not that it was dangerous or anything. It's just that it's an awful lot. And he told me the story about his zinc deficiency, and he was nearly dead. He was emaciated. His hair had gone. The doctors couldn't get his body to accept zinc in any form, but it was all synthetic, of course. And his hair, because of the synthetic zinc he was taking, his hair had gone grey, and he said he was emaciated and nearly died. And I met him in New York a while after because he wanted to import a product. These guys, him and some friends thought they'd found the next Red Bull, and it was going to be this amazing product and that, but his life took a turn and he went in another direction. But when I met him, he's a big, strong guy with a big black head of hair, and I was like, hard to imagine you, grey hair and emaciated. He says, oh, I nearly died, He says, I found an article you wrote about zinc nutrition on page 3 of Google by dumb luck, and I started taking high doses of it. He said, in 6 months, I cured it.
That is insane.
And
I
then he was
love
just,
this story.
After that, he was just taking a maintenance dose,
Yeah.
4 or 8 capsules, whatever, But he completely cured it. Now, I said to him at the time, I said, I wish I had more customers like you, but he was kind of an anomaly, an individual case. But in terms of dosage like that, I have a lot of people working in the hormonal field, and they will get people taking 16, 20 capsules a day to correct those hormonal imbalances. And that's the important thing. People think they don't like taking a lot of capsules because they think, they think they're equating it to a pharmaceutical, but this is just pure oyster powder. It's the pure essence of the oyster in a capsule. You can't take too much of it, So women are taking, and men are taking 16 to 20 capsules a day. They might do that for a month or 2 months to correct the imbalances, and then you can knock back to a maintenance dose, and couples trying to conceive, it's really important for men and for male and female sexual health, So take a high dose until you get where you want to be, and then you can knock back after that,
Yeah, I know. When you told me, I'm like, 4? What are you talking about? I want to take 10. So I take 10. I even tell my, friends now, I'm like, take 10. They're like, what? They're looking at me. I was like, yes, trust me, take 10. You'll see huge results.
Yeah, absolutely.
All oysters also contain amino acids. What role do they play in energy, collagen, and recovery?
Energy is very interesting with oysters because, oysters make, when I said to you earlier on about oysters living and accumulating zinc, the reason they do that is because they live in an area of the shoreline called the intertidal zone. And it's very stressful. So you've got extremes of heat, temperature, salinity, a lot of predation. They're exposed to the air for large amounts of time. So they have to make a lot of antioxidants to counteract that. And one of the antioxidants they make, I don't want to go too biochemical on you here, but one of the antioxidants they need to counteract the oxidative stress is one called superoxide dismutase, which is really important in humans in the mitochondria because it prevents mitochondrial damage. And that's one of the theories of aging, that after age 40, as superoxide dismutase production declines in the body, we get this oxidative damage in the mitochondria, which means less ATP is produced. And ATP is our energy currency. Everything that happens in the body needs ATP. That's our petrol or diesel or whatever you want to call it. So by taking the oysters, so when you talk about protecting energy levels, that's one of the mechanisms. And we actually did trials with human cells in vitro and found that the product was increasing SOD production in the body, and it's protecting the mitochondria and ATP production is one of the mechanisms. There are actually several, but that's one of them,
It's like one of the most important for longevity.
Absolutely, yeah. The mitochondria, anything you can do to delay that damage in the mitochondria is a big win in the longevity space, and it's the elixir.
Yeah, it is elixir of longevity and youth. And what about skin? Why, as we know, copper, everybody's so obsessed right now with copper. They're doing peptides, they're putting in their skin. So what is this oysters that makes your skin so glowy and beautiful?
And again, it's the regulation of the enzymes that control keratin production in the skin. And if you don't have, and of course with skin, hair, and nails, they're areas of rapid growth. And if you don't have correct zinc nutrition or zinc homeostasis, as we like to call it, the DNA can't split. You can't grow hair in the absence of zinc. And so when people take the product, their hair starts going crazy and they're like, oh my God, and the split ends are gone, and it's full of bounce, and their nail, you'll notice in your nails within a week, your nails will go really strong. And then in the skin, again, we did trials with human cell lines in vitro and we found that the antioxidant potential in the cells increased hugely. So for skin, as you know, any kind of oxidative damage in the skin can lead to fine lines and wrinkles and so forth. So again, the enzymes controlled by zinc, copper, manganese, and the three master antioxidants in the body are superoxide dismutase, catalase, and glutathione. And they all need copper, zinc, and manganese. They're what are called metalloenzymes. They need those three metals in a particular synergy, which of course the oyster gives, to make those master antioxidants for our body to protect from oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is happening in every cell in the body all day, every day.
Every day.
And one of the worst free radicals, of course, is the superoxide free radical. And that master antioxidant, superoxide dismutase, breaks that down along with glutathione and catalase. They make it harmless, render it harmless, turn it back into water.
Wow, beautifully said. Can you overdose on taking too many of these? Like you already said, like this one I was taking a bottle a day, but like, can people be scared and overdosing?
No, you can overdose on synthetic zinc, and synthetic zinc has what we call an upper limit, an upper tolerable intake limit. They call it the UL of 50 milligrams a day. But for this product, you're not going to get that antagonism. You see, that's the problem, because you have the synergy. It's the antagonism when you take elemental elements. If you take copper on its own, or iron on its own, or zinc on its own, there's an antagonism there, because they don't but that's not how we get our nutrition. And you don't get that. You get the synergy, and synergy is where the real power is then, when you're taking all these elements together. And that has nothing to do with us. We do as little as possible. That's the oyster. That's 300 million years of evolution. That's what you're taking when you're eating oysters.
Yeah. And I also hear that people feel much calmer, much more clear in their heads. What is it that the nervous system does for when you have these nutrients in your body?
Yeah, again, it's very high in B12, and that's very important for neurological health and for nerve cells. So quite possibly something there. With the thyroid, of course, that hypothyroidism, where you get the brain fog and the sadness, depression, that kind of thing. Again, we've got the selenium and the iodine. That's very important. Because people take iodine on its own. Again, this is another issue where they take maybe seaweed supplements for iodine. But iodine in the absence of selenium is not actually good for the body again. And even if it's coming from seaweed, because you don't have the selenium. And it's the selenoproteins, these enzymes that are controlled by selenium, that regulate the conversion of thyroid hormone from T4 to T3, which is the active form. So you need again the synergy there.
It's beautiful. What other incredible stories or testimonials you've heard from people taking this product over the years?
Well, a lot at the moment. We have some people working in the integrative medical space in Europe now, and they've been saying to me that people have even failed at IVF or getting pregnant. And for us, of course, that's huge. It's got to talk about word of mouth marketing, and that's great to hear, great stories like that. Well, antioxidant, zinc is the part of the body with the highest concentration of zinc in the back of the eye, because there's huge antioxidant activity there, or oxidative stress there, because UV light's going in and it's causing oxidative stress. So the body makes a huge amount of antioxidants at the back of the eye to neutralize those free radicals that form at the back of the eye. So possibly something there with that person who said they can see in color again. That's a first one. There's a first.
Yeah,
but we get incredible testimonials and people calling us all the time, And usually it's about energy, mood, just a general transformation in their life, But the trick is for sure to get people to take a good dose of it to correct the enzymatic and hormonal imbalances in the first place. And that's how the French do it. The French doctors, the integrative doctors do it. They'll put them on this course of oyster extract. If that doesn't solve the problem, then they go looking elsewhere. But they know they've caught all the minerals. Because oysters contain there's 59 trace elements in the body with known biological roles, and oysters contain them all.
Wow.
So we only test about 5, because those 5 we can make health claims on. But if you take 20 capsules, instead of making 40 claims, we can make 60, 80 claims on the product, because the dosage has gone up. And that's something we'll get into in a little bit later, about other products on the market and why there's misconceptions out there.
Let's talk about that, actually. So some brands promote zinc levels and perfect that in formula in the paper. But now that we know bioavailability matters more than numbers, right? So how can people tell the difference between the real nutrition and clever marketing?
Well, as you see on the bottle, what we make with only oysters, it says the elements, it comes from the oyster. So anything, this is food source. So anything coming from nature that's food source is far superior to synthetic. But there's an awful lot of misleading labeling going on in the supplement business, which really we don't like because it really makes us look like amateurs in the industry. And we need to be a credible business and a credible industry to not to compete with pharmaceuticals, but to to be an alternative. If somebody wants an alternative, but they have to be able to get the data, and that's why we test every batch so people can use this product clinically. But you'll pick up other oyster extracts, and it'll say oysters are an excellent source of zinc, or this product is an excellent source of zinc. And then when you look at the supplement facts, it doesn't say how much zinc is in there. It just says 300 milligrams or whatever they're putting in there, 300 milligrams of oyster extract per capsule. But if you say something's an excellent source, a good source, or it contains, they're actually health claims. That's a health claim you're making, and you're supposed to back it with numerical data on the label. Or how else are you supposed to use the product? It says it's high in zinc. We need 10 milligrams of zinc a day. That's the RDA. So if they're not going to tell you how much zinc is in it, how do you know how many capsules you're supposed to take? If you want to, assuming you want to take your RDA from that product. You see it all the time on beef liver supplements, and that they're saying beef is an excellent source of B vitamins, but they don't tell you how many. And the reason they can get away with that is because those products will be made in America, and the FDA just are understaffed, and they don't get to test those products and go around to all these companies and verify what they're saying, and to correct them and say, listen, they're false claims. You need to change your labeling. We send everything from Ireland into America. So every product, every batch we send to you has to go through FDA brokerage and FDA inspection. So we have to be completely compliant with the labeling regulations, which was very tough in the beginning. But the upshot of it is that you have one of the most transparent products on the market. And very few people do that anymore in the supplement industry. It's very disappointing, because it does it lowers the standards in the industry.
It does. And that's why if I had to do one supplement, I was like, I have to do the purest food in the world. And, thank God that I met you. You educated me, and I started taking it. I tested for like 8 months before I even, labeled this bottle for my company. And I was like, wow, I'm super excited to bring it out in the world and literally spreading the most purest food on the planet Earth to really help make the body healthiest ever.
Yeah.
Because we do really need amino acids and all the minerals and synergy in the body. Because now a lot of people are, have a lot of supplements, and then they're like, oh, I'm just going to take B12 by itself. And then they go buy separate zinc, and then they buy separate copper. And then they don't even know now. They don't even buy copper. They're just like, okay, well, B12. So it's like all over the place. They're just taking these isolated, supplements that even not natural, bioavailable.
For sure, yeah. It's a minefield out there. You walk into a health food shop, it's like thousands of products.
But people don't know.
I know, yeah.
They're not educated. They don't know this, this is what really exists. And, and just taking it, 4 to 10 pills, literally from one bottle, you'll do such an amazing job for your, health.
Look after the minerals first.
Yeah. And even
they're
kids,
controlling everything.
Can kids take that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Kids really need it because kids are growing. And in the absence, DNA cannot split in the absence of zinc, so there's no cell growth. And kids grow like crazy.
What age would they can they take? They start
as soon as they can swallow one.
Wow,
or
it's
take
interesting.
You can shake it into their food. When they're really, really small, like 6 months.
That's
you
powerful.
Can add it to their food, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
and
what they need.
What about dogs and cats? Do you think?
We do have people. It's an expensive product to be given to dogs, but people love their pooches.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, dogs really need it. I actually tried when I started the business first, because the Samoyed breeds have suffered terribly with alopecia and losing their hair. So I'd say they're removed from their native diet from Scandinavia and places where they're being fed seal meat and whale meat and all that, which is very nutritious. And now they're being fed soy-based diets and stuff like that. So they've real big problems with hair loss, those dogs. We looked at it, but the pet food manufacturers, they want cheap, and they put all synthetic zinc and everything. So you're never going to get them to take oyster extract.
Well, I'm going to actually start giving to my little doggy. So she's already 3. I think it's a time to start giving her a little bit of powder, like maybe 1 capsule open in the food,
Well, where there's one, there may be many soon, so be careful.
Yeah.
You can end up with a pack of dogs.
I love that. Why not? Look, if we all can benefit, this is incredible. This is a pure food, the cleanest food in the world. What's the biggest myth about oyster supplements you wish people would stop believing?
Well, I don't know how many people actually know about oyster supplements to begin with, but an oyster is not an oyster. There's such a difference in oysters, like the range of nutrient density in oysters and where they're growing and everything. We try to standardize it as much as possible, but there are oyster products. There's oyster extract online. I've seen stuff on Swanson multivitamins and other places with there's 70% maltodextrin, and the oysters are harvested from areas. Be very suspicious about where they're being harvested from. A lot of people who've taken our product will go for cheaper brands, but they ultimately all come back because they're just not getting an effect, or worse, they don't feel well on it at all because it doesn't have the synergy there. We tested a product recently, and we tested the synergy in our product between oyster and between copper and zinc. So the scientific literature says that zinc, copper are in a ratio of anywhere from 8-to-1 to 15-to-1 in the human body. So we tested all our I got a new quality manager and asked her to check all our lab data going back to the beginning of the business, and the zinc copper ratio in our product sits at 11-to-1, which is bang smack in the middle. But we tested I have a customer, he was worried about a competitor brand recently, and he asked me about it. I said, well, I'll buy a bottle and test it. And their zinc copper ratio was 41-to-1. And I said, there's something going on there. They've either added zinc to it or whatever, but that's not nature's ratio. There's something really weird going on with that product. And we're doing some more testing on that to see. But this happens all the time,
Yeah. Is it one from New Zealand that
I'm not sure where see, this is it. We don't know where the source is, There's product coming out of New Zealand that we know is coming from China. And they're bringing it in through New Zealand and then processing it there and saying that it's New Zealand origin, but it's not a New Zealand origin.
Yeah, it's true. In fact, this company that you're talking about, they were at Erewhon in our market in beautiful, most expensive market in California, in Los Angeles. And they were, in fact, selling it a bottle way more expensive for less capsules. And they had so many other additives there. They were not pure 100% oysters. And actually, they were taking off the shells really fast.
Yeah.
Probably they were not selling it or something.
Yeah, I had one distributor as well. He changed supplier and he got sick on the product himself, and he had to change back again straight away. He couldn't believe it.
Wow.
And, I said, and he had visited New Zealand, one of the places down there that produce it. And he said, yeah, you're right. He says, Chinese. He figured it out. He went down
so
there.
sad. How do you trust, companies, and how do you?
Well, it's a big problem in the supplement industry. And a lot of stuff. See, only about 10% of companies that sell supplements make them themselves. Most of those brands on the market are marketing entities that do it, and they just buy the product from some big contract manufacturer in China, Bangladesh, wherever. They could be in Europe, anywhere, but they're all synthetic, and they'll buy a product very cheap, sell it very expensive, and spend all their money. All the money in the middle is going on marketing and convincing people with all this misinformation that this is the best thing ever. Our product, we start with an expensive raw material. Like oysters are very dear to buy, and we start with an expensive raw material, and we don't have to do all that marketing,
Yeah.
And so we can pass that value straight on to the customers then,
Do you think the supplement industry has conditioned people to accept mediocrity? And what would happen if everyone demanded purity like this?
Well, it'd be a different market for sure. Well, you'd know what you were taking. You'd absolutely know what you were getting when you walk into a shop. Yeah, absolutely. But they don't. It's like what I said about the labeling. They'll say everything on the label, but they don't back it with data, and people are confused then because they're reading the text and saying, "Oh yeah, it's really high in this, high in that," but they're not then turning it over because they don't have the scientific background. The first thing I do when I hear that is I look at the product and sure, this is a false claim,
But also I see
cannot verify it.
Yeah, but I also see a lot of people want to buy cheap product. They're like scared to spend money. They're like, oh, it's too expensive. I rather buy a $20, $30 supplement from, Walgreens, Target, Amazon.
How much is your health worth?
That's what I say,
You see the medical bills, they're a lot more expensive than the supplement. Let food be thy medicine.
I love that.
That's Hippocrates.
I love that. Do you think we're entering a time where the ocean will become humanity's next pharmacy? And how does Only Oysters fit into that vision?
That's an interesting question for sure. So about 25, I think about 25, the last time I was reading that was about 25 to 30% of modern medicine is coming from plant forests and plant and agriculture, land-based plants. Very hard to get data on the ocean. In developing countries, interestingly, that figure of 30% is about 80%. They rely heavily on plant-based medicines because they don't have access to pharmaceuticals. They probably couldn't afford them. There's a university in Australia that they recently found that there were amino acids in oysters that help them repurpose antibiotics, actually. They make the antibiotics more effective, and that's something to do with working on the immunity again. There was a synergy there. But yeah, there's quite a lot of medicines and stuff that come from the ocean. When I think about the ocean and the plankton, there's 80% of the species in the plankton, maybe more, 90% haven't even been identified. We don't even know what's in there. If you ever look, sometime if you're in Ireland, I'll do a plankton trawl and show you it, because people look at water and think it's water, but when you concentrate it and look at it through a microscope, it's like another world. There's like thousands of species of little microscopic animals in it. It's just alive, and we haven't even identified, definitely at least 80%, if not more, have not been identified. We don't even know what they are, what they do, what their purpose is. And as more and more marine biology, we need more marine biologists to study that stuff, and then you can start isolating bioactives from some of them. And who knows? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, so the elixir of life could be in there. We all know the story of Atlantis.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
we know the phytoplankton, also one of the most oldest synergy there. Like I've heard, if you take phytoplankton, which I've been taking phytoplankton, also full of
you are
minerals.
You're taking phytoplankton and only oysters.
I know.
That's what oysters live on.
That's true. Yeah.
So oysters live on the phytoplankton. They take the goodness out of that and put it in their body. So you're coming up the food chain. It's like I'm saying, the further you go up the food chain, it's closer it's getting to human form. So that really important antioxidant that we talked about, superoxide dismutase in oysters is 60% similar to superoxide dismutase in humans. So when we eat the oysters, we're getting that protein has been broken into amino acids and peptides, which can flip across the intestine into our bloodstream, and then we can make superoxide dismutase. And that's the holy grail in food and supplementation, is you want to take something that stimulates our body to make human forms of it. Mm-hmm. You'll see superoxide dismutase from melons on the market, but that superoxide dismutase can't work in our body because it's plant-based. And if it did even get into our bloodstream, it'll be attacked as a foreign body by our own antibodies. So what you want to do is take a product that stimulates our body to make those really important bioactive compounds that we need for health, and that's what oyster extract is doing.
If 100 years from now, someone finds a bottle of Only Oysters washed up on a coastline, what do you hope they'll understand about the way we saw health in our time?
Thinking of a few answers to this one. Okay. Well, first of all, I hope they open it and rub it, and then I jump out like a genie and I get to live another life 100 years from now. That'd be great. I hope they wouldn't pick it up and say, I can't believe those people threw plastic bottles in the ocean. How stupid they were. And if a bottle of it lasted 100 years in the ocean, that would be quite a testament to our integrity as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like them to, if they picked it up, to say, oh, they're the guys who tried to get everybody back eating oysters again. And when we're all eating oysters now, 100 years later, and that is actually our mission, our legacy that we're after, because we started a project back in Ireland to restore this species of oyster. These are the native stocks that were wiped out in the 1800s. 99% of these have been wiped out globally, and we've started a project in Ireland to restore these, and there's projects all over Europe now at the moment trying to restore the native oysters. So we've had like this 120, 130 year hiatus from eating oysters. The nutrition is gone. But we ate oysters for about 250,000 years. And there's a theory that oysters actually save humanity, because about 250,000 years ago, they reckon Homo sapiens were reduced to about 600 individuals in South Africa and on the east coast of Africa. And they started foraging for oysters on the shoreline and other shellfish because they needed protein. And oysters were a lot easier to get than large game like a woolly mammoth. We have this image of these hunter-gatherers killing woolly mammoths. I don't think it was like that. I think they were foraging for food that didn't move, that was easy to catch. And when they discovered oysters and they started eating oysters, they got this really, really good protein source. They had high omega threes, which led to rapid brain development. They had this high level of zinc, which would have led to better reproductive success. And they exploded. Homo sapiens exploded from those 600 individuals. They outcompeted the Neanderthals, and now I think we're at what, 8 billion. There's 8 billion of us.
Yeah.
So oysters all through history, and especially with coastal communities, were a really important part of nutrition right up till about 1860 to 1910, which is the peak era of peak consumption. And America was fed on oysters. Oyster stew was a staple of the diet. It was cheaper than beef, pork, lamb, fish. And areas like the Chesapeake Bay, they shucked oysters and they shipped them all over America, canned, shucked meats, and people lived on them. But they collapsed the whole thing. The whole thing was overfished and collapsed. So that by about 1910, 1915, there were no oysters left. And then in the 1950s, we started farming oysters. So now global production stands at about 6 million tons, but 80% of that is consumed in China, or produced in China and consumed in China. So we have a lot of catching up to do to get back to that. And that's a big part of our work, is educating people about oyster nutrition, why we need it. We're trying to restore the native stocks, and we're promoting oyster consumption in general. That's how I got into the business. I had oyster bars. I ran oyster bars before I made the oyster extract, before I made OnlyOysters.
Yeah, I remember you told me the story. You
Yeah.
would go over even France and bring all the oysters and free wine. So you would have like people eating oysters and free wine.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we met. You were eating fresh oysters in Orlando. So
Yeah,
we got
yeah,
'em,
it
and
was
it's,
beautiful. It was a beautiful, thick, juicy oysters. I personally love oysters, but I'm very careful eating them at the restaurants again, and I feel like that's how a lot of people feel.
Yeah.
Or they don't even know like the oysters are important. We lost that education. We lost that over 100 years.
Yeah.
Why oysters are so important. I just wanted to be grateful that you are continuing doing this beautiful job protecting the most incredible species in your part of the area, which is also keep the waters clean. I know you're the biologist, and in Ireland, you guys all working to keep that water clean.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to finalize this conversation and ask you, if someone could only take 3 key takeaways from this conversation, what would you want them to remember?
Well, I'd like them to make oyster nutrition part of their lifestyle going forward, for sure. And as part of nutrition, what we just talked about, the 3 pillars of health, the tripod, or the blessed trinity of health, of course, as you know, are good nutrition, exercise, or I prefer to use the word activity, to keep yourself active, and good sleep. You need 3 of them for good health, for sure. The second thing, I suppose, would be marine conservation, marine restoration and conservation, to try and be aware of that. And anyone living near the coastline, see what's going on, put some pressure on the governments and the politicians locally to look after the coastal waters, to clean them up, to support oyster. Oyster farmers are really good to have, because they're really good guardians of the coastal environment, because they have to monitor the water. And one of the things in Ireland, like if oysters are grown, that water becomes what we call shellfish designated. It's for human consumption, so you can't actually pollute it. And you have really strong legal protection to keep that water clean. So I'd love to see, people get involved politically, because, as I think it was Socrates said, tyranny is the price you pay for not being involved in politics, or your local, the governance of your local area, So be active and around marine restoration, conservation, help out people who are trying to do that kind of work, because it's very thankless and they don't get paid very much. So if you've any organizations in your area, help them that. And I suppose the third thing is our legacy, What is our legacy going to be? I sometimes think about it, Like, what are we leaving behind? I hope to leave behind an awareness of the importance of oyster nutrition, and hopefully in 100 years, people will be sitting down eating oysters daily again, or at least a couple of times a week, and they'll be safe and healthy, and they'll be much healthier because of that, But whatever we do in life, to try and think a little bit about our legacy, what we're leaving behind us, I know the native Indians and that used to think long term about decisions they make, and what is our purpose here? I think that's an important part of our time here, to think about what do we leave behind, So
Beautifully said. And can I have a bottle? And I just want to say also, when you go to a restaurant, you order a dozen oysters. It's super expensive. also another reason people don't order, because it's it's like each oyster it's cost anywhere from $3 to $6. I think even more, because I don't even order oysters anymore. But like a dozen cost how much oysters at the restaurant now?
Oh, the restaurant next door here, I looked in the window, they're doing oysters are £5 sterling each, so that's about $7 or $8 an oyster.
See, that's
up to-
expensive.
yeah.
So,
But you're in for a surprise tonight.
oh, I can't
But
wait. Yeah, we're
but
going out.
you wouldn't come to Ireland, so Ireland has come to you.
Actually, I wanted to come to Ireland, which one of the first countries outside of Russia when I started traveling. It was Ireland. I actually lived in Ireland in Limerick for 6 months.
Okay, well,
So-
my mechanic is from Kursk.
Oh, yeah, you told me about that.
Siberia, yeah. But
And so I
there's a
do-
famous Irish oyster bar here in London called Bentley's, and
Are we going there? Ooh la
that'll be telling you, yeah.
Ooh la la.
So you have the
So
best
what I was
Irish
going-
oysters tonight.
I was going back to it's it's way cheaper to buy this bottle rather than eating out in restaurants. You can't eat every day. So this is a beautiful product. Thank you so much for making me this to happen. I brought it to United States. This is available. You guys try it. It's 150 capsules. The price is it's incredible. Also use my code. And yes, I'm going to be in Ireland next year filming all your facilities, everything, and making a beautiful video. In the meantime, thank you so much. I'm a huge fan. And now I wanted to, spread the word and make these oysters available around the world.
Well, you're our poster girl.
Thank you. Stephen, thank you so much for sharing your passion and knowledge. I love how real wellness doesn't have to come from something complicated or over-processed. Sometimes it's just about going back to nature and trusting what's always worked. To everyone listening, if you'd like to experience the benefits of our wild Irish oyster extract for yourself, you can get 15% off your order at OnlyOysters.com with the promo code Natalia15. As always, thank you for tuning in. Take care of your health, stay curious, stay connected to nature, and remember, wellness is life.